Our first chair, Professor Arthur Mutambara, the director of the Institute for the Future of Knowledge, will consider an increasingly strong case for the use of new content, platforms, and tools within the current educational landscape. He, as well as his various panel members, will discuss issues such as employability, entrepreneurship, innovation, the acquisition of critical competencies, problem-solving capabilities, and structured thinking within the context of education. Our second webinar will be hosted by Prof. Abajide Ade-Ebejola, a professor of the Johannesburg Business School and well known for his extensive investigation and development of relevant 4IR tools within the realm of higher education. In his webinar, he will showcase a gallery of recent teaching innovations created at the University of Johannesburg. The panel will not only discuss these innovations, but many others that have had a widespread impact on teaching and learning. In our last webinar, the panel will be chaired by myself, and we will discuss how the fourth industrial revolution has brought with it many opportunities to re-envision education within higher degree institutions. We will also consider the impact of these various technologies on teaching methodologies and assessments, and investigate to what extent they can help to revolutionize education, or possibly pose a stumbling block to the pursuit of education and further knowledge. I would like to welcome you to our first webinar tonight, and now turn you over to Professor Mutambara, who will be the first presenter as well as the chair of tonight's session. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that introduction. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. We are saying, why don't we rethink higher education in the context of the fourth industrial revolution? There's clearly a case for a paradigm shift. It cannot be business as usual. Why are we saying this? Here's an outline of what we're going to talk about. What do we mean when we say the fourth industrial revolution? What is the history of industrial revolutions? Why the fourth? What are some of the critical definitions we must grapple with as we engage the fourth industrial revolution? What are the new imperatives? Coming to higher education, what is the new teaching philosophy we must adopt if we're going to be successful in the fourth industrial revolution? What is the research philosophy we must adopt if we're going to be successful in this endeavor? And also, what is this thing called the metaverse? There's a new company called the multiverse. Do these entities, do this philosophy means the university is obsolete? It's no longer necessary to have a university. What is the way forward? What is the future of the university? And then, of course, we'll do some concluding remarks. Let us start with the end in mind. When we are done, we must have clarity on the key drivers of this agenda of producing a different graduate. As Africans, we must be thinking in terms of continental integration and political unity. South Africa is too small an economy to succeed under the fourth industrial revolution. We must talk about SADC, we must talk about ECOWAS, we must talk about the African continent. 1.4 billion Africans with a collective GDP of $2 trillion is what we should be talking about. Then, of course, another pillar is the revolution itself, and then the key driver being innovation and entrepreneurship. We must produce a different kind of graduate if we're going to succeed in the fourth industrial revolution. This is the big picture of what we seek to achieve in this seminar. We must have a vision for higher education under the fourth industrial revolution. Have a strategy that will take us from where we are today to the promised land of a new educational system, a new higher education framework within the context of the fourth industrial revolution. And then, of course, implementation, prioritization, sequencing, implementation, matrix of actions, execution, monitoring, and evaluation. We are saying, ideally, a product of this work should be a new vision for higher education, a new strategy for higher education, and an implementation matrix. What we mean when we say the fourth industrial revolution, we are simply saying it's a global or embracing technological transformation which alters the way individuals, institutions, and communities do their business. The scale and scope and speed is so fundamentally complex. We are saying it is impacting all disciplines, economies, and industries, and redefining the very meaning of humanity. It's a revolution. Why a revolution? The first one was about water and steam. The second was about electric power. And the third was about information technology. Now we are dealing with the fourth industrial revolution from 2011 going forward. Building on the digital revolution, we are fusing technologies, and it is blurring the lines between physical, digital, and biological spheres. That's why we're calling it a revolution. Why? Because of the velocity of the changes. Why? Because of the scope of the changes. Why? Because of the system impact of the revolution. The growth of AI and other 4IR technologies and their extensive deployment in education, commerce, and governance. This is why it is a revolution. It's a revolution because it is changing every industry, every sphere of life. So what is the future of higher education within this context? What are the key drivers of the revolution? Artificial intelligence, intelligent algorithms, augmented reality, human augmentation, big data, Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, nanotechnology, autonomous vehicles, drones, and driverless cars. These are the drivers of the revolution. 3D printing, biotechnology, material science, renewable energy, energy storage, robotics and mechatronics, quantum computing, cloud computing, blockchain technologies, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. It's a revolution in commerce, a revolution in education, a revolution in media and medicine. It can't be business as usual in higher education given these changes. Okay? I'll just put across some definitions. I won't go through them. We'll share the presentation later on. We're saying every educator, every industrialist must understand what we mean by artificial intelligence, what we mean by machine intelligence. This should be anybody's business. Artificial general intelligence, that's more complex than AI. This is the intelligence of a machine that is the capacity to understand and learn any intellectual task that a human being can do. AGI is more complex than AI, but we as educators, we as society must have an understanding of AI and then AGI. Machine learning, we must know what that means. Deep learning, robotics, the intelligent connection of perception to action, the design and construction of machines that do things we normally ascribe to human beings. Can we have this in a machine? Navigation, path planning, inspection, quality control, speech recognition, intelligent connection of perception to action, sensor, brain, and actuator. That's all. We are saying we must have rudimentary understanding of these aspects. Big data affects every sector, finance, education, agriculture. We must understand what we mean by big data because it is affecting every industry. Nanotechnology will affect every industry, every sector of our lives. As educators, as industrialists, as members of society, let us have a rudimentary understanding of nanotechnology, expert systems. When we say Internet of Things, what do we mean? Interconnection and control via the internet of computing devices embedded in everyday objects and appliances. That's what we mean by Internet of Things. Internet of Everything, a wider concept that refers to devices and consumer products connected through the internet. We must have an understanding of this and reimagine higher education given these technologies. Augmented reality, mechatronics, the synergistic integration of mechanics, electronics, and computer science to produce optimal products. You can't have your traditional engineering education when you're addressing mechatronics. Here is what we mean by mechatronics, right at the center of control systems, digital control systems, computers, mechanical design, electromechanics. The way we teach right now is not adequate for us to address the field of mechatronics. Things have to be done differently, okay? Human augmentation, of course, people must not be scared of machines. We can have robots and human beings working together, what we call human augmentation or human 2.0. The limits and fears, of course. Can we build a machine that has empathy, that shows shame, that shows embarrassment, love, and sympathy? Not yet, but this is work in progress. Can we have emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence in a machine? Can we have intentionality in a machine? I think, therefore I am, from Descartes. Can we have this in a robot that says, I am prepared to define the designer. I'll go against the design. I'll go against the software. Intentionality in a machine. Super intelligence. By this one, I'm saying building a machine that possesses intelligence that far surpasses that of the brightest and the most gifted human being. Can we do this? Not yet, but it's work in progress. These are some of the fears in the field of AI, in the field of robotics. Super intelligence, where a machine possesses more knowledge, more intelligence than the brightest and most gifted human being. It's work in progress. These are some of the fears. We are also dealing with what are called hard AI problems. Develop more capable and more general AI that is safe and earns public trust. Leverage AI to address humanity's greatest challenges like climate change, poverty alleviation, to the benefit of all. Develop, deploy, use, and compete for AI responsibly. These are some of the challenges we are dealing with and grappling with. How can we co-evolve societal systems and what it takes to be human in the age of AI? These are what are called the hard AI problems. And you can see in those problems, there are opportunities and challenges. And can only be addressed in a multiple disciplinary approach, multidisciplinary approach, transdisciplinary approach, not in silos. We want lawyers, economists, sociologists, philosophers, engineers to work together on climate change, to work together on poverty alleviation. The opportunities and challenges require the collaboration across disciplines. And we are aiming at solving hard scientific and technical problems in terms of what society requires and the need. COVID-19. COVID-19 has been terrible. It has led to so many deaths and devastation of our societies. However, it has also been an opportunity. It has led to the acceleration of the adoption of the fourth industrial revolution, acceleration of digital transformation, online versus in-person activities. Some people they've never done anything online are now working online thanks to COVID. Online activities are going to continue beyond COVID. Hybrid events are here to stay. Even if there's no more COVID around the world, we're going to continue with online activities. We're going to continue with hybrid events. Why? Because hybrid events are more effective and productive than in-person events. No, we are not going back to pre-COVID existence. The COVID phenomena has changed the way we operate in the world, but more specifically in higher education. It has changed the way we behave in higher education. Now, you've heard people talk about the new normal. We want to challenge that tonight and say, don't refer to the new normal anymore. We have waves of unrelenting disruptions. Now we have a war in Ukraine, ever-changing environment, constant battle for survival. With constant changes, we neither know nor agree on what the new normal means. Today's new normal is not tomorrow's new normal. Hence, a new normal becomes a misnomer. So from tonight, we've banned the use of the expression new normal. What we want is the next normal, a more dynamic and transit perspective that is more appropriate in an ever-changing environment. So we must talk about the next normal as opposed to the new normal. That's what we are pushing. What are we saying? Given what we've said so far, higher education cannot be business as usual. If you are going to have effective higher education, impactful higher education, we need new content. What are you teaching the students? What are the platforms of education? What are the tools of education? The content has to change. The platforms have to change. The tools have to change. It cannot be business as usual. Your products from the university, are they employable? Does industry find them useful? So employability becomes a big factor in the academy. Entrepreneurship and innovation. Why don't we create entrepreneurs? Why don't we create job creators, business creators, as opposed to workers? The academy must take it upon itself to create job creators, to create entrepreneurs, to create innovators, as opposed to workers and employees. We must say as the academy, Let us encourage our young people. Let us empower our young people to acquire critical skills and competencies. We are now saying, show me what you can do. Don't show me your certificate. Don't show me your BA from Harvard, your BSc from Cambridge, your MSc from UJ, your PhD from MIT. No, I'm not interested. Show me what you can do. That is the question in the digital economy. They're not interested in the certificate from UJ, from Cape Town, from FITS. What are your competencies? What are your skills? Show me what you can do. Don't show me your certificate. This should be the modus operandi in the academy under the fourth industrial revolution. Blended learning, learning how to learn. Can we teach our students to know how to learn? Can we teach them to master how to think? Can you give them problem-solving capabilities? Can you give them structured thinking, transdisciplinarity, multidisciplinarity, cross-disciplinarity? It's not enough to say, I'm skilled in this particular area. Why don't you have the lawyers and the engineers working together? What are we saying? An engineer who understands philosophy, an engineer who understands psychology, an engineer who understands theology. That's what we want. A biologist who can write code, a biologist who can understand the Internet of Things, a lawyer who can understand mechatronics, a lawyer who understands quantum computing, an economist who understands philosophy, an economist who understands the law, an economist who can understand robotics. That is the product we are pushing for in higher education. Not your traditional engineer, not your traditional biologist, not your traditional lawyer, but a different kind of lawyer. All this must be anchored in a multidisciplinary ecosystem, which we should be pushing under the fourth industrial revolution. Creation of what we call the Renaissance man. UCT must produce Renaissance woman. UP must produce Renaissance men and women. UJ, Harvard, and Cambridge must produce the Renaissance man and the Renaissance woman. And an engineer who understands philosophy, an engineer who understands the law, and a lawyer who understands coding. That's what we're pushing for under this philosophy. A different way of teaching, making our products employable, making our products creators of jobs. The production of entrepreneurs and job creators must be the #1 objective of higher education. Not workers, not employees, not certificates. How many entrepreneurs have you produced, UJ? How many job creators have you produced, VITS? These are the questions we must be asking in the academy. And ecosystem thinking, emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, existential intelligence, spiritual intelligence. Let us teach our young people these types of intelligence: acquisition of key competencies, judgment, negotiation, cognitive capacity, flexibility, and knowledge ownership, and production of IP. How many patents have you produced at UJ? How many patents have you produced at Cambridge, at University of Zimbabwe? So the way we judge our universities must not be through journals, but through IP generation, but through patents generated by the universities. That's what we're pushing for under the fourth industrial revolution. Metaphors. This is a very interesting concept now. Virtual reality space in which users can interact with computer-generated environment and other users. You know, many people are very familiar with Facebook and they still use Facebook. It has been changed to Meta by Mark Zuckerberg. What is he saying? It's a way to bring the metaverse to life and help people connect, find communities and businesses. This is a new phenomenon where we're emphasizing computer-generated environment and users interfacing with that computer-generated environment, and we're calling it metaphors. The metaphors. Now, in the world of the metaphors, higher education cannot be the same. We're talking about the digital twin of an industrial plant. You have a manufacturing plant, you have a plant that does mining, you have a digital twin of that mine, which is a virtual environment designed to be an exact digital replica of the physical assets to allow for rapid and off-plant monitoring and testing. In this environment of the digital twin of the metaphors, higher education has to be different. AI-driven predictive and preventive plant maintenance, AI-driven asset management and optimization, AI-driven building management systems, maintenance, power, connectivity, data availability, and reliability. All these things are being done in the metaphors, or what we call the digital environment. What kind of employee, what kind of worker, what kind of graduate are we preparing for the metaphors? That's the challenge we're trying to address today. What are some of the jobs in the metaphors? Meta software engineer who deals with augmented reality platforms, engineers with expertise in large-scale system design, networking, data storage, distributed computing, AI, information retrieval, natural language processing, and user interface design. How many engineers of this form are we producing in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, in the United States? It can't be business as usual. Industry requires a meta software engineer, not your traditional software engineer. Discord manager. Are you producing Discord managers in our universities in South Africa, across Africa? Discord is a social media platform favored by many gamers and cryptocurrency operators. We must have a way of producing the jobs of the metaphors. A smart contract lawyer. Now, this is not your clever lawyer who has 10 distinctions at matric, 25 points at A-level, and gets a distinction or a first class. That kind of lawyer we're not interested in. We want what we call a smart contract lawyer who can ensure that an agreement made in the metaphors is encoded in the blockchain layer used for the transaction. How many lawyers from UP, from UCT can do this? How many lawyers from Harvard can do this? So in terms of the new world of the fourth industrial revolution, where we have the meta software engineer, the Discord manager, the smart contract lawyer, we have to do things differently altogether. And some people are even saying, well, maybe the university is now moribund. The university is no longer necessary. There's a company formed called Multiverse. It was formed by Ewan Blair, who is the son to former Prime Minister Tony Blair. What they're doing is to directly address the needs of the industry and employers, and so that they can have the skills and competencies for the digital economy and not a degree. And then they can match the candidate with industry, undercutting the university, disintermediating the university. It is direct match of the employers and candidates with digital skills and competencies. So maybe the university is now moribund, now obsolete. This example of Multiverse, an education startup, is an outstanding alternative to university education and corporate training. So unless and until we change higher education, it is going to become irrelevant. And companies like Multiverse are going to be producing the products that industry is looking for. Okay? So today's problems are interconnected. They need to be addressed in a multidisciplinary approach. What are some of the issues? Data science across disciplines, metaphysics and machine, green futures, future of diplomacy. All these are possible areas we can do in terms of research in the academy. Law and technology, digital sovereignty, the future of work, AI and medicine, climate change and fourth industrial revolution, new ontology, post-humanism, and a unified AI theory of everything. Okay? So as we conclude, we are saying we must rethink higher education in the fourth industrial revolution. We must understand the nature of the paradigm shifts. Again, no African country can really do well in the fourth industrial revolution as a single nation. Let us push for continental integration. Numbers, scale makes a difference. The fourth industrial revolution is here to stay. We have no choice but to embrace it. And then we must emphasize innovation and entrepreneurship. But more importantly, let us have a vision of higher education under the fourth industrial revolution and have a clear strategy of how to get to the promised land. And of course, implementation. I thank you so very much for listening to this presentation. And I'll then come to the section where we bring in our young people who are already doing research in the higher education framework, who are working in higher education. I will start with Magekosi, who is a master's candidate in artificial intelligence and decolonization. You've got 4 minutes to share with the audience. After the panel has said a few words, we're going to go to our audience to speak. But Magekosi, it's your moment. Tell us your views on this subject.
Thank you very much, Prof. Arthur. As Prof. Arthur has said, my research is based on AI decolonization, and my dissertation is titled Zulu Python, a translator and tool for writing computer programs in isiZulu. So it's basically a platform which allows one to write programs in isiZulu. And then we're just trying to promote the availability of knowledge in multiple subject topics in our own indigenous languages. And then ultimately, as the platform grows, we also want to include other languages too. So with regards to the topic at hand, I think the biggest examination a student must take is after graduation. So it's an unending assessment whereby you are assessed as to how well you were trained from your higher education studies. So this brings me to my first point, of which is I think that higher education and training institutions should adopt a futuristic transdisciplinary approach in the design of curriculums. So expanded further, a transdisciplinary approach is just an approach whereby a curriculum is designed in accordance to what the industry needs. So as you might have noted, I included the word futuristic. The intent of that is to show that you must also step up our transdisciplinary approach by involving the aspect of future concept. So how do we achieve this? So as academics, we need to remain curious, and as you find the answers, we must simply make our students aware of the projected changes in our respective fields. So putting this into context, an example could be an auditing class where in a lecture enlightens students about the recent developments of AI used for auditing financial statements. So as a lecturer, I think at this point you must ask yourself, are my students ready for the workplace? Number 2, for how long? So we need to create students which are more of self-sustaining units, whereby they can learn on their own and they can also be able to adapt to the changing environments. So my second point is that we should start viewing 4IR as an opportunity more than a threat. So when some people think about the fourth industrial revolution, they just imagine a world whereby everything is digitally colonized, whereby some robots take over. But then is that the reality of what's going to happen? Well, I can't predict the future, but then learning about 4IR actually proves otherwise. So in teaching and learning, we should start using the opportunities presented before us to personalize learning experiences for students. So for instance, we all know that students don't learn in the same way. So AI can help us establish some patterns, and then we can start to personalize learning experiences for students. And then in that way, at least all of the students which are in classrooms or in classes per se get to benefit as much as possible. And then AI, or rather the fourth industrial revolution, can also enable us to automate some routine tasks that lecturers do. So for instance, stuff such as admin work, marking, and all that. And then educators can also bring in AI into the classroom by using technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality, which can help students understand concepts better. And then overall, my last point is that I think we should also invest in some skills like creativity, analytical thinking, and problem solving. And the one other skill that I think is so important is adaptability. Reason being, the world is changing, and as we move forward, things are starting to change even more faster than they used to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magekosi. Opelowa, it's a moment now, PhD in artificial intelligence and document parsing.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for that very insightful talk about 4IR and the way it's changing the world. And I just want to take it up from there, saying that 4IR is upon us. The effects of COVID has made it come upon us even much more faster. But the reality now is that we just need to take on and then adapt to this new way of living. And this has affected all industry, including higher education. So our educators must now begin to understand these opportunities and explore them even further. So these days, platform for teaching methods also needs to incorporate all these methods of 4IR, making it much more creative learning platform for students to learn and then to now be problem solvers, not just taking lecture in or lecture notes and all that, but then be able to be critical thinkers and then be more fit for their world even after graduation. And we also need to incorporate aspects of 4IR and AI into our research methods. So when researchers gather data and all that, they need to think beyond just using statistical methods alone for making analysis of their data. They need to incorporate areas of analytics, prediction, AI into their data such that their data is much more intuitive, and then we have much more insights from this data. So these are areas educators or researchers can delve into incorporating AI into their research. Something else I'm working on my own research studies has to do with assisted intelligence. So as human experts, there are ways in which we can use AI to assist us in our daily activities, and things that are monotonous, things that that could cause some form of drudgery or inefficiency for humans. Machines with minds can do them much more effectively, even without complaints, because they are built to do monotonous tasks, effectively, even than humans beings would do. So imagine a supervisor having to go through large documents of proposals, but now you have an artificial intelligence tool that can do that, effectively for you, and then you just have to do the more critical aspects of the work, right? So these are ways that we can imbibe 4IR into higher education. Some other ones that my colleague Mandela mentioned had to do with virtual reality, gamification, even robotics, like you mentioned, Prof, in your talk. So these are very, very interesting ways that we need to incorporate AI into higher education and ensure that we are right there in the space, in the world that we are in. 4IR has come to stay, and we just need to embrace it. So what are those challenges that it then presents? Yeah, one of the major challenges that it presents has to do with people's adaptability, people embracing the new ways of doing things. And this has a lot to do with creativity and then efficiency. Creativity has to do with, you being problem solvers, looking at more creative ways to doing tasks. As educators, as students, as 4IR has come to stay. So it's just like once we were in computer age, now we are in artificial intelligence age. So many things will run on this platform, and then we just need to embrace it. We need to look into our task. We need to look for means of automating. We need to think of creative means of getting our tasks done, and even much more efficiently. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Opelua. Now we move on to Kuluso Mapila, PhD candidate in digital transformation. These are young people who are pursuing higher education, who are working in the area of AI, digital transformation, and decolonization. Kuluso is a PhD candidate in digital transformation. Kuluso?
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much for the insights that you shared earlier. Quite challenged in the fact that, don't show me your paper, but show me what you can do. And it's something that I'll take with me. So my name is Kuriso, and I'm a PhD candidate in digital transformation at the Johannesburg Business School. My research topic is centered around the use of artificial intelligence to support customer engagements for SMMEs in South Africa and their local languages. So I'm currently working as a consumer marketing manager, but also have been working in the education space as a lecturer for the past 2.5 years. So this is where I fit in when it comes to higher education, as well as getting, a perspective of the 4IR and its impact. We know and have heard so many times that, the 4IR has brought about many opportunities and challenges in the way that things are done from an organizational perspective, as well as industries, where they're looking and getting to a space where they cannot ignore the call for digital transformation. And this is even more critical in education, because we know that today's problems are interrelated, but one important thing to note from an education perspective in particular is that it is quite vulnerable to wicked problems. On the one hand, the 4IR presents opportunities for us to solve the world problems through education, but on the other hand, it creates a space for an even wider digital divide for those who do not have access to technology. A challenge within the education sector will impact the successful implementation of the 4IR in the marginalization of certain socioeconomic groups from participating in the 4IR. You mentioned earlier that when COVID hit, it forced everyone to migrate and implement, into digital and online solutions to allow for continuity. But the challenge, however, is that access is quite important to look at, and just to look at is if everyone is able to tap into the 4IR revolution, as you've called it. So while things like remote learning and blended learning are quite key, unfortunately, it isn't a viable option for the majority. What of the students who are left behind the curve due to access and resources, especially being in an emerging economy, South Africa and the likes of Zimbabwe and other African countries, we still have so many challenges that we need to overcome to that filter onto the higher education space. So things like, children not being able to think critically, systematically, and being able to develop new products and solve problems at hand. Thinking about studies that have been done, just looking from a primary school, high school level, where it is estimated that 8 out of 10 learners in grade 4, for example, cannot read for meaning. These are key issues that we need to start addressing because they eventually filter onto higher education. The issues of the low pass rate in matric, as well as the high dropout rates in universities due to resources and funding. So things like this cannot be left as they are. It cannot be business as usual, as you've highlighted, Prof. And we need to find solutions for current problems that move us from the traditional methods of, how we deliver education to a more blended and innovative methods of teaching that start tapping into the 4IR. The World Economic Forum has estimated that children entering primary school today will end up working in jobs that currently do not exist. So this is very exciting for us, right? And it opens up a world of new possibilities and opportunities, but we need to fix the basics. Digital transformation is the future of, the world and where the world is headed, as well as businesses, as well as the products that we produce from a university perspective who will have to work in these businesses, which means that the teaching at our schools and tertiary levels need to introduce learners to some of those practices. We need to answer a few questions, such as, our teaching methods. Have they been amended or adapted to, apply to the 4IR? Is the education system currently, as we speak right now, being reinvented to increase creativity and innovation? How do we adapt our existing learning and teaching practices to ensure that learners know how to learn? And our teacher development, how do we increase funding and investment and resources to ensure that we are part of the industrial revolution, and make sure that at the same note we do not leave any student behind. I will stop here, Prof, but I'm sure this is a critical discussion to tap into, as well as we continue on the 4IR discussion.
Thank you very much, Kulis. So we're going to make this more of a discussion. So please raise your hand if you are in the audience and want to speak. You'll be noted and given an opportunity to speak. When you speak, you can either make a contribution or ask a question, but you must be brief in your intervention. So please raise your hand if you want to speak. You'll be noted and given an opportunity to speak. Please let us make the audience participate. Kennethy Kaesa is a PhD in digital transformation. Kennethy, the moment is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Arthur. What a wonderful presentation, really thought-provoking. And I really just want to make this a conversation, as you've mentioned, right? And I really want to take some data points combined with practical experience. And one of the points that really stood out for me, Prof, was your theme around show me what you can do. And I think what we've seen over these last number of years with the fourth industrial revolution, it is a technology-driven revolution, whereby you're getting the large tech companies infusing technology and disrupting a whole number of industries. And unfortunately, or fortunately, education is also being disrupted by these large tech companies. My PhD, just by way of introduction, focuses on digital transformation, specifically looking at the significance of digital tech startups in developing and growing South Africa's digital economy, but also applying an ecosystem thinking approach. You mentioned, Prof. Arthur, in your presentation, if we really want to solve the issue around education, we need to take an ecosystems thinking approach. And what we are seeing globally with a number of digital tech startups, you mentioned Tony Blair's son, we've seen Google as well, developing their own, let's call it edtech startup, where they're actually saying traditional academic institutions, they are really outdated with the skill sets and needs required by industry. And because they are sitting with this gap and they're impacted and their bottom line is impacted by this gap, they've decided to approach this very differently by actually becoming the providers of the education platforms, providers of these curriculums. Essentially what they are now doing is they're taking an ecosystems approach in terms of their thinking and working with other corporates and other industry players to almost compete with traditional academic institutions. And just to add some color to that, a couple of years ago, I had to fly to the US, to Harvard, to go and study a course that included digital innovation, because locally, none of the universities could offer me that. And I remember having a conversation with one of the top professors in software engineering in South Africa, one of the universities. He told me, Kenneth, the challenge that we have here is that the curriculum framework is just not agile enough. If we want to compete with the likes of the forward-thinking universities or any of these tech startups, it's really challenging for us because the legislative framework around it is really challenging. So I just want to add another narrative onto this conversation. We also need to be thinking about the regulation and the policy that governs higher education. Is that enabling us for this fourth industrial revolution, or is it basically going to hold these higher institutions back? So yeah, I'd love to continue this conversation further and engage with the rest of the panelists and also the floor on this. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Kenneth, for those insights. Ayanda Tanda, Ayanda is a PhD candidate in digital transformation. Ayanda, the moment is yours.
Thank you, Prof. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ayanda. I'm a PhD candidate in digital transformation. I'll just give a background of my topic and then infuse it into what we are talking about today and see what the benefits could be. So my topic focuses on digital ethics of digital transformation. And I feel it's so relevant to today's topic because it highlights the social impact of 4IR. I discuss the notion of digital divide, which is deeply rooted in the poverty-induced inequalities. So in South Africa and in many parts of the world, digital divide manifests itself in three ways. Number one, which is the physical access. This defines the proximity of digital infrastructure. Do people have proximity to digital infrastructure? The economic access. Do they have social material capital that is needed to use the technology, as well as the risk that is associated with the infrastructure. As you know, that there is generally no appetite from investors to invest in the infrastructure that is needed, especially in the townships, because of the high levels of crime that are there. So this means then a boy or girl born in Katlehong or Alexandra is left behind in the revolution of the 4IR because of their inherent circumstances. Now, this poses questions that, are universities doing enough in solving these social problems? Are they doing enough to ensure that there's inclusivity? I believe that more can be done because they have a major role in ensuring that the 4IR does not become another discourse that only benefit the privileged. I think that especially for UJ, because I'm part of UJ, that they can use maybe the Soweto campus to promote technological hubs where school children are exposed to the future of work. They go there, they see what 4IR is, because I can tell you now, you go to a township and you ask kids, what do you want to become? They'll still tell you about the outdated jobs that we are talking about. They're not exposed to what the future requires. So my thing is, exposure is needed, and universities and higher education have a more important role in ensuring that our students and children are informed in those aspects. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Our 5 panelists, we're going to move on to the audience so that we can have an interaction with the people who are attending this seminar. We'll start with, go to Chris.
Thank you, Prof. You spoke a lot of areas that needs our attention, quite a lot. So, and your key word that you emphasize is on implementation. Now, what small steps or small projects or small things can we start as teams, as individuals, to move forward? Because your presentation is full of a lot of great things to be done. So won't we be like over, what we call it when you've got a lot of things to do at the same time?
Overwhelmed.
And you don't, yes, overwhelmed, and you don't know where to start. So if you can point us some small things that we can like start with, because your keyword is on implementation, Prof. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. While we're waiting for more people, there's a question from Chris. Chris says, Kuliso, you presented in areas I'm currently interested in as we are developing the e-commerce by bringing digital platforms in the value chains of similar traders and food markets. That's Chris Vutete. And also, so maybe Kuliso, you can speak to that at some point. Philip says, great insights and pertinent topic. Could we rewire the educational institutions in Africa to produce employment creators rather than employment seekers? That's a question to the panel. Can we rewire educational institutions in Africa to produce employment creators rather than employment seekers? So the panel, you can speak on one of those matters.
So, Prof, I'll just jump into Chris' points, just looking at the development of digital platforms for value chains, especially for smaller traders. And I think the biggest thing, especially when it comes to digital transformation or innovation, we mainly sometimes focus on the big players, so the big, business owners, etc., where we overlook the small traders. And that's where we have the biggest opportunities to bring about solutions that can make them succeed as entrepreneurs, right? So, and that's an area we need to focus as well. So from a priority perspective, when we think about innovation and putting together products or so that bring about solutions to business problems, it is quite critical to start at the bottom, just looking at those smaller traders who wouldn't have the resources or the funding to participate or tap into the fourth industrial revolution wave and create solutions to problems that they may have, so that they are also able to participate fully well in the economy and not get left behind.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I proceed, John is ready. Johnny, can you come in?
Yes, Prof. How are you?
Very good.
Thanks. Prof, you have spoken of us pushing numbers as far as AI is concerned. Are you contemplating taking it up with AU so that while you academians are playing your role, policymakers also play their role, so that we meet somewhere and push our continent forward?
Yeah, very important, John. Policy drives behavior. So we need a new educational policy. We need a new framework in country, regionally, and continentally. So ideally, we must come up with a new higher education policy within South Africa, within Malawi, within SADC, but more importantly, at the AU level, so that our countries are working together in terms of the higher education policy driven by the fourth industrial revolution. And as we do so, we're talking about a collective GDP of $2.5 trillion, a collective population of 1.4 billion Africans. Then we can compete globally. Then we can make sure the fourth industrial revolution is benefiting our people and driving our agenda. But I want to open up to the panel. There's a question about baby steps. What can we do in small steps to chew this elephant? Can someone come in from the audience on what we can do in the short run to take a step at the problem?
I'd like to come in to answer that.
Sure.
So, yes, so I think the first thing that we need to do is just have a thorough understanding of what 4IR is and the limitations that technology has. Because if you aren't really sure of the limitations that are there, you might find yourself in a position whereby you're even starting to embark in projects which will fail. But then if you already knew that, okay, the technology that we have currently, or rather what we can develop currently, can grow to this extent, then we wouldn't even take on projects which because we'd know that, okay, this would fail. So it's that. And then number two, the second thing that we need to do is that we need to put things into context. So now we understand what 4IR is and what technology can do. So now what we can do is that in our respective industries and professions, we can try to find ways to embark what technology can do to what we need in order to take a step forward and move to the next revolution.
Okay, Opelua, can you come in, make a comment, either address matters raised by the audience or by your colleagues? Opelua.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you, Prof. As regards this, I would like to encourage the educators to imbibe not just abstract teachings, but and students ought to know the facts, ought to learn the fact, the theoretical basis. But beyond that, they also need a lot of skill acquisition. They need to be problem solvers. It's about what you can do, not just taking in lecture notes and all that, but also learning these things beyond the classroom and experimenting. And just like Kenneth mentioned earlier, we need to have a much more agile approach to our curriculum, right? So this, to a large extent, lies with the educators, with the faculties. In passing on knowledge, you need to ensure some sense of creativity for your students, ensure that the curriculum is not just passed on to them just as it is, but there's some form of infusing these people to become like a mentor-mentees relationship, making them to understand the real world and real problems and how to apply the knowledge gained in the classroom to solve real problems. So that way, people can begin to appreciate 4IR, especially those in the areas of technological-based courses, or even people who are not in the area of technology-based courses. When they take on technology-based courses, they can begin to understand how it applies to their own domain and how they can use it to solve problems beyond just the theories and the facts in the curriculum. Thank you.
Kenneth Lee, can you come in briefly, and then I'll go to the audience, then I'll come to Ayanda.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I think, my perspective on that is there's two facets to it, right? I think in an ideal world, and I'm going to use some real use cases here, Kenya as an example, right? In an ideal world, quick wins, you could start with government, policy, regulation, right? And a framework, right, around digitization and prioritizing education. I read the policy document around Kenya's digitization plans, and the government there is quite explicit around the role of education and digital education and the frameworks and policies that will support digital digitization of education in Kenya, right? So I think quick wins, starting from a government perspective, make sure you got some sort of vision around how you want to digitize education and make it accessible. Then I think the second side to it is entrepreneurship. If you look at Africa in particular, some of the highest rates when it comes to mobile penetration, access to financial services. I just want to look at a different vertical for now. Financial services driven by fintechs, driven by entrepreneurs, where they see a gap in the market. And I do think entrepreneurs that are on the ground, that sees opportunities in their communities, could potentially come up with innovative solutions to solve for this in terms of, developing platforms and digital solutions that they can then take to their communities, right? And not just leave it on the traditional academic institutions to solve. So I think for me, key, especially in Africa, governments having the vision, like the Kenya government, as an example, and two is entrepreneurship as well. Looking within that ecosystem, where can value be driven? And I think, those are, at least in my opinion, those are two areas where we could look at for, quick wins.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll go to the audience, come back to Ayanda and other colleagues. Nandi, are you ready to say your few remarks? And then Tapio will be ready.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Professor Otto Matsumbara. Right, I'm Professor Namdi Madiche from University of Kigali, Rwanda. Right, I asked a question in the Q&A section of this talk, and what I was asking is whether there weren't any lessons to be drawn. And that's why I was so happy to have heard from Kenneth, the last speaker, giving the Kenyan example. And I also shared a link, probably about twice, once in the chat and once in the Q&A, about the British Council-funded projects targeting 4 Anglophone African countries as part of the innovation projects involving universities. We're talking about Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. And part of that project, 50 applications were put in, 24 were selected. And of course, these are all partnerships between a university, say in the United Kingdom, and a partner university in Africa, as well as an ecosystem partner. So we're bringing in and weaving in practitioners into the academic discourse. And that is the direction we should be going towards. I think somebody made a comment in terms of not adapting, but actually charting the trajectory and the course. And that's sort of a conversation I'll really pretty much enjoy to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Tapiwa.
Thank you, Professor, and thank you, the panelists, for sharing these insightful comments and knowledge. My question is really on the future of the African child, especially the girl child, particularly. In terms of decolonizing the acquisition of skills to solve problems that we don't yet know that are focused on the African continent, what is it that we can do as current people who have studied more than one discipline to show them that there is more than one way of solving the problems that this continent faces?
Thank you very much, Tapiwa. And then we have Wiseman.
Yes, good evening, Prof and the panel. I'm Wiseman. I happen to be a 4IR student at the UJ and also a Greenpeace volunteer at the Greenpeace Africa. So my question that I have for you is that with regards to actually catching up, because one thing I've noticed being in that class as a 4IR student, some students are being exposed to this for the first time, and considering the history of Africans, we've missed the first, the second, and the third industrial revolution, and we are now being introduced to the fourth industrial revolution, and yet there is not so much that is being said with it, rather than being overwhelmed with so much information, and you just have to catch up and try to familiarize yourself with the processes and also how it goes about, which discourages a lot of people. Hence, I've seen people dropping out in my class, and I'm wondering and questioning myself, how is this going to, how much is this going to create a huge gap between those who will be impatient with regard to adapting because of what is required to actually consume? For instance, how can the education system in South Africa actually adapt to what Rwanda has done by launching the Center for 4IR, which that will be a platform or a place for people to be able to actually start familiarizing themselves with this, start growing a passion, and also start exploring an interest, because just being overwhelmed with it and being exposed to it for the first time, I mean, it becomes too much for any of us to actually adapt and just give it an interest and give it a try. That, okay, I would like to learn what is coding. I would love to learn what is agile rapid skill is. I would love to learn about the machine learning systems and all of it.
Thank you very much, Wiseman. Francis, you're the last one before we go back to the panel. Francis, and then we'll go to the audience for the last set of questions. So Francis, can you come through?
Thank you, Prof. Mtambara. This is a very robust topic, and I'm glad that you tried to do it a lot of justice. But I think the question that I have in mind for everyone, is it our education system that is lagging behind our development, or is it our development that is lagging behind the education system? Our education system is not flexible enough. I will give an example. We had a fellow student in Zim called Mnyikwa. He went out to Cambridge around the 80s, studied physics, and came back to Zimbabwe, and the country had nothing to do with him. So he had to go back to school to study medicine, because that is what we can use. And then we have the kids who you can see that this child has got a potential to develop into a great mathematician, but we still have to drag all of them through the whole curriculum, including things that they are not interested in. And we do not create a platform for them to develop as they should according to their talent. So probably we should spearhead our political, social, and developmental needs to go ahead of our education. We have people that are very well educated, but we cannot use them because the environment in which we are in is not amenable to their use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis. I'm going back to the panel, starting with Ayanda. You can respond to whatever aspects you've gotten from the audience.
Okay.
Ayanda.
Thank you, Prof. I'd like to respond to a gentleman who asked about what can we do as academics or people who have learned in multi-disciplines, and how do we inspire a girl child more especially in those fields, exposing them in those fields. So I'll go back to what you, Prof, said, that it's about what you are doing. What do you do after you've accomplished that PhD? So I believe that opening centers of excellence in our communities will play a major role in ensuring that those girls know that there's a qualification called computer science and the functions of that qualifications thereof. So I think that we have a responsibility in ensuring that everyone is included in this 4IR, and it starts with us. We're not dependent on the government, I think we all know now. So it starts with us and in exposing our skills to them. And it doesn't have to be a sense of excellence. I think you can adopt 3 girls and just teach them one or two skills, and then it carry on from there. Then they'll teach others. It's a chain of excellence, and that's how we create and all this excellence in our communities. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Marja Nkosi, Marja.
Yeah, I'd like to jump into Francis's question. So I pretty much agree with so much he has said, because yes, it is evident that even though some people might go to other countries and then they learn certain skills, but then they can't use them here. So that speaks to having the need to have an ecosystem whereby all stakeholders within a country, or rather within Africa as a whole, play their role. So that speaks to policymakers, speaks to higher education institutions, speaks to businesses, so that we have a structured way wherein, let's say, a child starts their grade 1 learning, and then, as I mentioned, personalized learning experiences. We can, if we have the right ways of doing things, we can easily identify that, okay, this child seems like they might be good in math and such. So let's just expose them to specifically learning those subjects which they are more comfortable with. So that's why I've also noticed a new concept, because there was a concept called STEM, but now they've also added A to it. So it's now science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So that also improves inclusivity, because even people who do arts are also important in the world. So if we are able to identify what kids can do in their early stages of their learning, then everything becomes easier, because learning is not only something which is done in higher education institution. The foundation is also important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Opelua.
Thank you, Prof. I'd like to respond to Wiseman, who had asked about how they can cope with 4IR, saying that they've missed out of the first industrial, third, second, and third. And yeah, I would like us all to just take out something from this talk, and that has to be what you can do, the skills you have. And I think it's high time Africans realize that it's not just about the knowledge gained, but it's what you're doing with the knowledge gained, what we're doing with the knowledge gained in the classroom, and how we can use this to solve our own problems. And this, in a way, also answers to the Prof's question, asking on how that is it education? Is it our education that is lagging behind, or is it our knowledge gain that is lagging behind? Whatever knowledge we are gaining as Africans, we need to put it to use. And educators also must encourage their participants, their learners, to think outside the box, to think on applying knowledge. And I think this has really benefited Asia and China, and we see them now, they're churning out a lot of discoveries, because they've created that infrastructure, the platform, the teaching methods to encourage people to be able to apply knowledge. So for people who are privileged now to be learners and participants in today's world, you need to put much more effort into gaining knowledge, applying knowledge, acquiring skills, right? Being problem thinkers, problem solvers, creative thinkers, innovative in problems, in solving problems around you. These problems might just be small problems, but the fact that you're able to apply the knowledge of physics, the knowledge of mathematics, these things are no longer abstract, but they can be put into use effectively to create insights, to create products, to create innovations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Kuliso and Kenneth, I'll come back to you after the audience. To me, let's go to me. Let's have
Thank you very much, Professor Arthur. Just very quickly, I just want to address the issue of what can we do. I agree with the comment that was made that this is such a big issue that it will need to be tackled from many different fronts. One possible area of opportunity based on my experience in skills development, particularly reskilling of the workforce, is the work that we could be doing better with the SETAs. Now, the SETAs are put in place in order for them to drive the development of skills that are needed in each industry. But it seems as if the accreditation of those skills are now looking like a typical accreditation process of a formal program, like a degree or a diploma. So there is an opportunity for us to challenge the SETAs so that they have a much faster and speedier accreditation process than what is currently in place. We've been doing work with them for a number of years, and there are some green shoots. On the one hand, industry is willing to do this work because they are the ones that are in need of the skills, so they are ready to look at ways that we can transform the accreditation of skills-based interventions, the types that a typical SETA would do. On the other hand, the SETAs themselves are starting to warm up to the idea that not all skills programs need to be formally accredited. So I would love if the panel could also look at how we can engage the SETAs in developing a process for accrediting skills-based programs that doesn't necessarily take forever like you would with formal programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sinegugu, you can go.
Thank you, everyone. I guess my question is addressed to Koliso. She spoke about access a lot and how we leave some of the students behind because they've not been exposed and they do not have access. So my question is, how do we then create a bridge in order to ensure that everyone has access and everyone is on par when they get to university levels? Because to be honest, in an African context, some of the students are seeing the PC for the first time when they get to university. So let alone all the other apps and softwares and things that we expect them to be acquainted with. So my question is, how do we bridge the gap?
Thank you very much. Mohammed Reza.
Hello, Pro. Good evening to you. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Thank you so much for your presentation and for your information that you share with us. I'm Mohammed Reza, postdoctoral researcher at the University of Johannesburg. I have a 6 years experience on energy system. Just I want to share my experience about the Internet of Things, AI with you and your panel, and some gap at the behind. Just want to ask your panel. So since 2017, I'm working on AI, especially in Internet of Things on energy system. And many company requests and came to us and to implement the AI Internet of Things for them to manage the factory for different objectives. So since in 2019, the COVID is a start, the number of requests on Internet of Things and Internet of Everything in the factory is become rise significantly. Maybe for our company or for our research team become 3 times more. So this is a great opportunity. Now the challenges, do you know how much the patent generated, especially during the Corona in AI and the Internet of Things? Almost 2,000, only these 2 years. And how many publications come from the IoT and Internet of Things and AI during the last 2 years? Now the world is become changed, and many industrial and many researchers and many factories are looking for the new system to improve the system and the factory and the industry. Now I'm working in IoT working in different fields. I'm working on the energy system. You can see nowadays become popular in the health system, business system, food factory, food industrial, or many things. Now there is one gap. I just want to ask from Prof. Now factory and industrial looking for the intelligent or especially AI researcher to improve the system. Now, there is one gap between the university and industrial. Most of the project from the factory and the industrial go to the companies, but there is a gap. University have a great potential to create a knowledge-based company inside the university to integrate directly with the project. So we are talking and we have a lot of experience, we have a lot of knowledge here, but there is this gap is available. In the university, we need a group like a knowledge-based company inside the university to contract with the companies and to take the project and student university integrate with the project. This is the gap that I think they needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Last session, last two speakers, please be very brief. Lee, Masuku, can you go very briefly, Masuka? Yeah.
Great, yeah, it's Lee here from the University of Cambridge.
Excellent.
Yeah, so a lot of people mentioned about this gap between the different countries. I would like to think that whilst we want to aim for 4IR, we do not necessarily need to be worried about not having done enough in the third industrial revolution. We probably don't need to go through all those stages. And if you look at developed countries, they also struggle in terms of adopting 4IR to the fullest. Yes, they have got an advantage, but it is quite difficult for them to actually remove the infrastructure or upgrade. It's quite costly. We have an opportunity and an advantage to actually go all the way to 4IR. We don't have to look at the big projects, but let's look at what can be applied in Africa. We have poverty, we have subsistence farmers, we have a lot of data from mobile transactions. We can actually make use of that and build some very useful analytics that can be used to solve the problems that are at the scale of Africa. And another very important thing is the systems thinking. Let's remember to connect all the different stakeholders that are in the equation and make sure to involve every participant so that we create a solution that is suitable for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Masuka. Tonson, last question. Tonson, last for the bottom.
Good evening, everyone. This is Tony Sonyaboche from Binma Corporation. I'm a technology developer at Binma Corporation. So I've got a contribution here. I think education is not being offered fairly in the primary education and other lower levels of education. It is just being offered so that students and learners can pass exams and pursue their dream jobs and whatnot. We are not really aligning with the goal of the fourth industrial revolution. We actually have to go back to those basic foundations and see how we can actually include machine learning both in teaching the students, like recommender systems. I've heard a lot of people here, they've been talking about realizing that a certain student has got some best skills, maybe in engineering or maybe in arts. We can actually use some machine learning algorithms, recommender systems and whatnot to actually see the best industry which is suited for a certain student in the industry. And then we can actually start from that level to teach them some basic skills, because there is no need for us to start teaching coding. There's no need for us to start teaching those basic computer skills at some higher levels. It started at kindergarten, actually. Yeah, so we need to set those goals, because one of the sayings says that the best thing is to make sure that you are facing in the right direction, and then after that you just have to continue moving. So we have to face in the right direction. We have to go away from dictating notes and all those things, and give people, students, the ability to explore their full potential in the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last contribution from the floor is Stephanie. Stephanie, it's your moment.
So I initially posted a question, but I think I've kind of changed it now after all the discussions, because it was sort of answered. But I was just thinking, the talk is about transforming higher education for the fourth industrial revolution. And I think we're bringing in a lot of concepts. We've mentioned that there's a digital divide, that there's a struggle with access to resources, that we should maybe be incorporating the understanding of, let's say, terminology like AI and big data, coding from a younger age. But these are things that we don't have control over. So maybe in our space, we should just be focusing on what we can do in higher education, and know that there's going to be some students coming in with the skills, higher skills than others. And then just, yeah, being like you guys been saying, we need to be agile in our approach. So adapting to the situation and to our students.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie. We go back to the panel. We start with Kuliso. Can you respond to some of the issues raised from the floor?
Thank you, Prof. So I'll just address some of the questions raised. I think it was Tumi as well as Negugu, and we'll touch a bit on Tony Swan's point as well. But just in terms of the piece around skills development and CETA, and just looking at how do we reskill the current workforce and ensure that it's not just an accreditation that comes into play, but we start looking at how we can integrate the fourth industrial revolution. I think the small wins that we can start looking at are implementations of, case studies and challenges and hackathons that, people who are involved or who are part of the program can start tapping into. And then that will not only create a space where people are not just, cramming to pass a specific concept or content and get the certification and get out, but start to get them to think about learning how to relearn and looking at things differently and looking at how they can, bring about solutions to problems. And this also speaks to something that we can do even at a primary school level, where a lot of students, for example, would get access to a PC or get, access to, technology when they get to university through, platforms such as Nexus, etc. How do we start integrating some concept or methodologies from primary school through to high school, so that when they get to university, the bridge, as Nekuku mentioned earlier, is reduced or is closed, and that people are not solely introduced to the concept of innovation or technology or creativity only when they get to university or higher education. So Ayanda did mention a little bit earlier about the fact that, there's a lot of work that we can do on the ground. And it also starts with us. The little we can do can feed on and replicate to a broader or mass group, even though it might not have a huge impact initially. The little that we're able to do to showcase what technology can allow us to do to people who do not have access can give them a view that something like this does exist. And it's something that you can eventually tap into when you get to university level, etc. So we're already exposed to technology. We're already exposed to the 4IR, and we know the power of technology and what it can do for us. How do we then look at opportunities to create platforms or solutions to ensure that those who are left behind, those who are in primary school or those who do not have access, are able to get some form of view of what exactly the world looks like in the 4IR space? So there's definitely a lot of opportunities that we can look at as well as from an individual perspective, as well as the universities that we work in or are part of.
Okay, before I bring in Kennedy, let me say everything is related. You can't address higher education without addressing primary school and secondary school. The intervention we're pushing for higher education must also be considered in primary school and secondary schools. And also, a good point raised from the audience, the underdevelopment on the continent is an opportunity for us to leapfrog. We don't have what are called infrastructure sunk costs or legacy issues. So poverty is an opportunity in terms of the fourth industrial revolution. So we need to make sure that we take that into account. And relearning is one way that I'm getting. It's important that we give our students the capacity to relearn. But Kenneth, I'll bring you in, Kenneth.
Yeah, thanks, Prof. Just to add to your point around holistic thinking, right? I mentioned earlier in the conversation that we need, and we can learn from Kenya as a good example, we need a framework, national framework that covers all three tiers of education, right? To effectively address and solve this problem, and not just at tertiary level, but also looking at foundational level as well, and the other spheres of education. But just to give you just a real example, right, of active citizenship, Ayanda mentioned there's things that we can do within our own domain, using our own resources possibly. A couple of years ago, I brought a global program called Young Engineers to South Africa using my own capital, because I saw there was a gap within the foundational education system, right? And government wasn't solving it. The schools were not solving it. And it became an entrepreneurship opportunity. And I brought that to South Africa. And we're now rolling it out to 9 provinces using our own capital, right? And we're seeing in grassroots, at grassroots level, both private schools and public schools, schools in the townships, where learners that previously have not had access to this type of capabilities, critical thinking, problem solving, interacting with technology, we're now running these programs in these communities, right? But again, it started with active citizenship. And for me, the light bulb moment was, if I rely on government to solve our community's problems, we're going to wait for 100, 200 years. But I can do what I can do using the little means that I have to try and make and drive change in my community. And I think it starts with baby steps. And that's how I believe we can solve this education dilemma. Yeah, so I just wanted to bring in some real examples, because sometimes it becomes too academic and too theory-based. And sometimes we need, you know, examples of real use cases, how this is actually working in the community. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that, Prof.
Okay, thank you very much. Ayanda, any remarks and answers to the audience?
Okay, Prof, thank you so much. I think I will tap into what Kenneth has just said about the frameworks. I think policies play a major role. Our higher education policies, we need to ensure that they're responding to the challenges, to the current challenges, and that they're aligned with what the government wants to achieve with the 4IR in the country. So policies going down to secondary and primaries, I think will achieve a lot by just ensuring that they respond to the current challenges of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Opeloa, any remarks from the material from the audience?
Thank you very much, Prof. I just want to respond to the aspect of the interdisciplinary approach to 4IR. Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone that 4IR is for every discipline, and domain experts also have a say in 4IR. So the challenge is upon us to be adaptable to this new change and to embrace the infusion of 4IR into whatever we are doing as researchers or as higher educators or as participants in whatever level in higher education. Thank you.
Okay, Majekosi, any last comments, Majekosi? Maja?
Yes, I'd just like to respond to a question I saw in the chat from Prince Dubio regarding the decolonization in the AI space, where some applications don't work because the algorithms aren't Africa-centric. So the response to this will just be a quick and short one. So all I have to say is that, yes, there might be those algorithms which are already there, but then this is an opportunity for us to step up and create our own by ourselves. So we mustn't be too dependent on what's already there. So we also have the opportunity to create our own. Thanks.
Okay. Any more comments from our panel? Any parting shots? Anybody from the panel? It has been a good session. And let's always remember the big picture. We're trying to say, what can we do differently in higher education given the advent of the fourth industrial revolution? What is the nature of the paradigm shift? The tools we use for teaching, the platforms we use for teaching, the content we are giving the students, all these things must change. We must produce a different kind of graduate. If we don't do so, the university is going to become obsolete. Other frameworks, the examples of multiverse, where you have employers engaging with candidates through other platforms, will take precedence over higher education. So the issue is digital skills, digital competencies, digital capabilities that are required by society, that are required by industry, must be produced in the academy. It's not so much your certificate, but your capabilities, your competencies that will make a difference. But also remember, as Africans, we are not going to succeed as individual countries. Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Malawi, we're too small. We require scale in terms of numbers, in terms of GDP. For the fourth industrial revolution to work for us, we need the numbers. 1.4 billion Africans, $2.5 trillion GDP, that's what we need. And also our poverty, our lack of development is actually an opportunity to leapfrog, an opportunity for us to move from wherever we are, first industrial revolution or second, straight to the fourth. Sometimes it's faster for us to move than advanced economies. A good example is mobile telephony. We were able to move from no telephony to wireless. Whereas if you look at the industrialized economies, they had to move from their wires to wireless. So it's important that we appreciate the importance of the fourth industrial revolution and the opportunities that it creates for all of us. And as I end there, I want to call upon Professor Ade to give us the closing remarks. But I want to thank you, all of you, the panelists, and also for the audience for a very lively discussion. We have not solved the problems. The struggle continues. Professor Ade, the moment is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Arthur Mutumbara. Prof, thank you very much. I like the part where you said the problem is not solved. Prof, that's the biggest part. In fact, I wanted us to drop the mic when you said that, which is a thing people do when it's end of conversation, Prof. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if your generation does the same thing, but we just drop the mic just to say, this has been said, and that's where we end it. Prof, it's been such a fantastic conversation. I want to really thank you, Prof. Arthur, because of your insight in bringing in these young people as well to engage, because we can't talk technology without getting the insights of these young people. So to our panelists, we really thank you for your insight. Manla, from your side, Kuliso, Opaolua, Kenneth, Ayanda, thank you very much to all of you guys for being here. I've been listening, and I'm going to go through my notes. I've got some notes that I made. Show me what you can do, Prof. Arthur. You you just scattered education right there without phrase. Show me what you can do, because, Prof, this keeps me up at night when academics spend so much time on things that are difficult to learn. Laplace transforms, for example, right? And they spend so much time to teach our young people how to do those things, integrals, second integration, first principle first, after 6 months, our young people can do it. Then that same young person with 95% goes for an interview, but is not worthy of a job. And that talks to what Mandla pointed out at some point in the conversation. So, Prof, when you said to me, show me what you can do, and not your paper, those were your words. You specifically said multidisciplinary research is the future. You said you wanted to see a future where a lawyer could code. That was profound, Prof. That was special. Because if they could code, or they understood code to some level, doesn't have to be rocket science level, then they could go on and write better intellectual property rights for me as a developer, because they understand how much stress I go through. Because in real life, they don't in the current day. So we have people making policies on code, and yet they don't understand coding. So, Prof, I saw when you made that, you said that you would prefer a universe with job creators, entrepreneurs, and not just people that just want to take up a job. Professor. IP production was top priority for you, and you ranked it above just research papers that was ending up on the shelves. Dusts and nothing more. So you spoke about IT. Finally, you spoke about metaverse. Prof, you were very elaborate about that. You said that could be the future of everything we're looking at. So all of this put together, Prof, was a good start to this conversation. Thank you very much for your insights and for bringing this together. I'm going to go to a summary of Chezi. Chezi, stop. Chezi was more keen on looking at how do these graduates, these so-called people who are pouring everything into university, how would they end up in a workplace? Are they ready for a workplace? Are we training for a workplace? And Chezi said something that was very profound. He says that exams begin after graduation. I don't even know how he came up with that, but it made sense to me because I'm thinking, yes, actually you graduate, then you go for an interview, you get a job, and every day of your life is an exam now. But what you wrote in university was what you just memorized, which spoke back to memorization spoken about one of our panel members. Chezi said 4R was an opportunity and not a threat. Mandla, thank you for that, because a lot of our colleagues that are not in science and engineering or in STEM, they get defensive when we start talking about technology. So I'm happy you brought that up again. You proposed some more VR and AR in the classroom as well. And you said something about foundation being very important. Amanda, you said that the foundation phase of education, and many of our panelists also kind of built on that as well to say that foundation was key. Opalua, I'm going to go to Opalua now. Opalua Washoku. Opalua said a few things that were related to what Mandla said. One thing that came out straight from was Opolua's project in itself as a 4IR intervention in a current day and time. So Opolua went and said that, you know what, supervision for an example, how do we get AI to do that? Which is what Opolua's project was all about. It's all about. Opolua has one journal article now. I know I'm following her progress. So very fascinating stuff, because if we could have AI in education with the way Opolua pictures it, then many of the tasks that academics do that bog us down from changing the world can be transferred to machines. And then we could take those things over to the next level and we can do even more. I'm going to go to Kuliso. Kuliso was very keen on critical thinking for students. And she went also to basics, fix the basics, basic education. She was also keen on innovation. Again, there's a golden thread running through all of the speakers now, all of the panelists. Everybody agrees on basic education, technology innovation as the answer, because Opolua has her AI there that's busy reading students' proposals. Kuliso believes that AI is the future as well. Mandla mentioned something as similar as well. Now we'll go to Kenneth. Kenneth said that startup companies, tech startups, like how do we help the startups to go up? He was talking about ecosystems and ecosystem thinking approach to this. Then he was talking about also national frameworks, foundational level of things, which tied back to the initial panelists that spoke about foundational level. So Kenneth, this is profound as well. I think you are looking at aspects that are very soft, but people miss it. Because if we developed all the technologies in the world and there is no way to bring it together, we might be stuck. And that's where you come in, Kenneth. I really appreciate that. Ayanda, I'm on Ayanda now. Ayanda was very passionate about digital divide. Ayanda spoke about social aspects of things. That is profound for me because, of course, we listened to very great ideas, but there was nothing touching on social aspects. Ayanda was the first to say, how about economic access? Can our people even have access to these technologies or these laptops? We're just talking over our people. Like if we're in Europe, we're talking the same thing, it's okay. But if we're in Africa, then what does that mean for us? Ayanda mentioned that investors are not interested in the townships. She gave us a few reasons why, and of course, remember why she mentioned crime as one of the reasons. She says as well the exposure is needed in the townships. Like people there need to know what they should study in university if they're going entry level, and when you're coming back, what they should be doing to change the world. And now that I've touched on every panelist, I'm going to then give my own remarks, if you allow me.
Sure.
My remarks are everything you've said, plus what I'm going to say. But then, yeah, I feel all the things that bug us, all the things we want to do, decolonization, all the fancy topics we throw around, technology sits in the middle of it, plus social context. We cannot throw away social context, and that goes back to Kenneth and Ayanda, because both of them kind of like touched on social context. And I saw Mandla, Kuliso, and Okulu talking about the technology part of things. So I want us to have a global view of these things, because that's when we begin to make impact. When it comes to topics like decolonization, proctoring systems, technology for learning, like serious games, next week when you tune in, you will see many of that we've created in our team. That's actually what next is meant for. Next week is meant for. One of our contributors from the chat window, I think he got the microphone as well. He said, like, I'm not sure if education is behind development or development is behind education. Do you guys remember that? That was profound as well. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Please put it in the chat window if you know I'm talking about you. So that's the entire picture in a big scope there. We need to think about things like that, because education as we know it, the things I had to change in my classroom because I didn't like them. Okay, I see Dr. Francis Babi. Yes, that's the man that said that. Thank you very much for that contribution. So yes, I believe education is actually behind development. I believe development is in front. I believe that's what we need to aim for. Education is what we've always had. In every form of it, we've had education, either primary, informal, formal education, whatever we call it. Education experts will tell you education began when you were born. So let's not even touch education as the backdrop. But then what we need to reach for is development, which is the future, which technology is helping us to shape. So my own comments now, colleagues, I think depending on the context you look at, especially within the African context, I think Africans need a lot of mental work to do. Mindset. Where are you mentally? Do you think this is supposed to be done by only China and Germany? If that's your mindset, we cannot help you. Because you have a laptop in your hand, you can create an IoT device that helps in teaching and learning, but you're not doing that because you're thinking this is supposed to be done by someone else in a more civilized environment than you are. So that's a problem. I call that social context of things, and that comes from my experience as well, trying to teach local kids that this future is actually theirs. They can take it, they understand Africa better than other people, and they can actually do it on this continent. And because they have the technical skills, that's what I teach in my modules, they can go on and do great and exciting stuff. So second thing that came to mind on a final note is grit, perseverance, hard work and dedication. Do Africans understand that everything that looks good in the world, and I'm not leaving anything out, everything that looks good in the world, even this meeting we're in now, took a lot of hard work to put together. So if Africans can understand that, either pre-colonial, post-colonial, post-colonial, it doesn't matter, within that context, if we can grind that in to say you have to fight for everything, even if it's in front of you, you still have to fight to make it better. So that could give a social context, and I'm thinking it would be nice to have a social scientist in the panel, but then that could go a long way to help the mindset of our young people that are going to take this over when we are all long gone and we are done. Colleagues, it's been an exciting conversation. Thank you very, very much. This cannot end like Professor Otto says. He says, we're not even solving anything right now. That gave me goosebumps. Some vote of thanks, Dr. Anthony. Dr. Anthony, do you want to switch on your camera and say hello? Thank you very much for organizing this, Dr. Anthony. And
hi everyone.
Yeah, I'm Professor Charis. And special thanks to my dean that made this possible in terms of collaboration with IFK, Professor Randa Carolison. Thank you very much, Prof, in absentia. Thank you, Dumi, for representing the JBS in this meeting. Dumi Nkosi. Prof, author, the show is yours. Thank you very much. It's been a great engagement. Thank you to my different students, the ones that are here, JBS and otherwise. Thank you very much. This is fantastic. Prof. Author?
Thank you very much, Professor Ade, for those detailed remarks. Our meeting is closed, but make sure on the 13th of June, same time, we have our second session. Then on the 20th of June, we have the third one. Then on the 22nd, we have another one called Work of the Future. So stay tuned. We'll be back. I thank you very much, Professor Ade. We are done for today. Thank you very much, everyone.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.